As the NBA playoffs continue, the Spurs are mustering their efforts toward the draft, waiting for the lottery to see if they've got 2 first-rounders, or we'll have, I don't know, 3 next year, 4, depending on what the Bulls do. And as we sit, lots of conversation as to the teams that are recently or about to be exited, where their best players are going to go and who's going to hang around. The Hawks have been in the NBA sites for several reasons for the last couple of weeks, as Trey Young seems to be playing out his string there. DeJounte Murray hasn't been a success either. I read an article where the Spurs might be more interested in DeJounte than Trey Young. What do you make of that, RJ?
I make that they probably want to pay less and he's going to cost less. So, plus they know him. There is always, there's always something a little bit more to, hey, we've been there, we've done that, we know this guy. Look, and the idea that DeJounte would be a poor decision or anything like that, I think is ridiculous. There's merit to it. I know we talked about it a few months ago. And so if you don't want to do Trey Young, fine, but at some point you have to do the big thing. You know what I mean? If you don't want to do the big thing yet, okay, so be it. But we're only going to give you so many not big things, and this could be one of them. He helps, and there's no question about that. So it's ultimately a good thing.
Okay, I'm going to give you a list of guys. And this is courtesy of Pounding the Rock. Players that you'd most like to see the Spurs pursue via trade this summer. Trey Young, Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, Mikal Bridges. Now, that's just 4 of the guys. And we'll, let's throw DeJounte in there as well. 5 guys.
Okay.
Which would you?
Is the question which one I prefer?
Oh, well, would you? Is there anything? Is there anything there that is worth the effort that would be required? Because a trade's going to involve picks and talent. And there's some guys here that, man, I'll let you know what I think.
I think if I had to power rank them, it'd be Trey Young, and then Donovan Mitchell, and then I really don't care. You know what I mean? Like at that point, you've really lost me. At that point, it's it's okay. You know what I mean? But I understand that Trey Young is a bit of a divisive subject right now. That there's a lot of people who don't want to go down that road at all. And hear me out. If you're anti Trey Young, I'm not. I'm obviously pro Trey Young, but I'm pro doing something. You know what I mean? Like Trey Young and Donovan Mitchell represent doing something seriously, taking a serious swing at things. Any of the other options you mentioned don't. I mean, they're interesting and they're legitimate things, but they're not something serious. I want to see something serious done here, and that means Trey Young and Donovan Mitchell. Now, I don't want to do a serious thing just to do a serious thing, to be very clear here, which is the plight in general. But Trey Young is my number 1 option with Donovan Mitchell a very close second.
I'm of the mind, looking at what I see here, if I'm relegated to this list, it would be Donovan Mitchell for me first. A guy, because we talked about this yesterday, and it comes down to when you look at what Wemby is, and you go, okay, who do I want, or what do I want to go get to pair with what the skill set that I now see we are going to utilize more than others. And I now see that we are further away from Wemby being a true 5 than we were at the beginning of next year. Wemby is going to be a fluid guy, grabbing rebounds, leading the fast break, finishing the fast break from the other. So that being said, there's 3 kind of guys you can pair with him. You can get a guy like Donovan Mitchell, who has his own gravity, where Wemby can stand on one side of the court, Donovan can be on the other side of the court and go get his own. He doesn't need a pass. He can just have the ball and go get it. There's that kind of guy. Then there's the kind of guy who will live off of Wemby, who's going to find himself on the weak side that Wemby will find over the top, that's going to feast on threes and wide open court because double teams are going to leave him. There's that kind of guy who I would put the Trey Young there. He's going to be able to go and get wide open shots and be available all the time, and Trey would live and do very well. Or the third type would be some help down at post, a big guy to get behind him, to block shots on the second layer, to grab some of those defensive rebounds, and to help with the offensive rebounding kind of stuff. That's me looking at the 3 types. And when I look at that on this list, I like Donovan Mitchell because he can go get his own. He doesn't need any help. He's strong enough to dribble through double teams. He understands all those kind of things. He's gone through the wars. He's not my first choice, But of these choices, that's the guy I take. What would you guys take? 656-3776, 656 ESPN. Mikal Bridges doesn't quite suit that. And I'll say I don't like them on this list because the Spurs would never bring in Mikal Bridges, ever.
Something that we talked about on Monday was, has somebody, we use Trae Young as an example, has he lost enough to want to come be?
That was a great point, by the way.
Like has he experienced enough lows? Has he, LeBron in Cleveland walked off while Boston celebrated, to the point that he's done, right? Like he's ready to just put up with something else in order to achieve something else. I don't think that Trae Young has lost enough serious basketball games to have, it thrust upon him that he might need to go be Robin somewhere. But I do think Donovan Mitchell has. I think Donovan Mitchell has been through a lot more. And so, but he's also got the potential, I think, to be a bigger leader. And so you do have to struggle, and that's a good thing. But, do you want him to be a leader? Do you want him to be the face of your franchise? Do you want, it's a delicate line to walk and balance between Wemby's the leader, Wemby's the face, but we need this guy. We need Scottie Pippen, whatever. I think Trae Young is inherently more Scottie Pippen, but I think he's also maybe less willing to be Scottie Pippen. So that's a weird dichotomy.
Woj, this isn't a Woj bomb, but I will say this. Woj has fluctuated in this offseason, which tells me, because this draft is so weird, that they're really, who was it? Jeff, the basketball guy with ESPN.
Jeff Goodman.
Yeah, it was Jeff Goodman. Essentially said, hey, man, this draft is going to get some GMs fired. It's so bad. There's just, but because it's so bad in most people's eyes, there's going to be a diamond or two that's going to pop up. But for the most part, it's awful. So there's that side of things. Free agency is now kind of weird. Listen to Woj talk about the free agency period that's imminent.
Listen, this is a team, I think, just like last summer, where the market was far more limited. It was Damian Lillard available. There was only so far they were going to go in a trade. He gets traded to Milwaukee. It's going to be a different summer in the NBA. I think there's going to be a lot of guys entering the NBA portal.
Right.
And I think there's going to be a lot more player movement this summer. Part of it is teams underachieving, but it's also part of the new salary cap. Payrolls have to change.
So Woj's talking about payroll going up, as the CBA will attest, and new TV rights deal is imminent. There is a shift in the market. We have had some failed attempts at improvement, like we've seen in Phoenix, and the Lakers are going to probably swing for the fences one last time. You can see teams like the Pacers that got active late. You got some imminent failures coming with some contracts available. So the portal, which I find the upward mobility of the collegiate prospects very interesting as the NBA portal will open up. So if the market is active, does that tell you the Spurs will be active?
All the fantastic local reporting has suggested no, right? Like all the word seems to be that, hey, if you're expecting one thing, you might want to adjust because we're probably not going to do this. And so, I just don't know how, unless this is some long con and they're going to really surprise us in the summer, I really don't expect that. I think that they believe that they're on the right track, and they might be, to be fair, but that they really believe that they don't have to take a big swing right now. And they might justify it by saying it's too early. We don't want to, we don't want to get in over our skis. We don't want to do something that we'll regret. So we want to take our time.
That's my expectation as well. I think that the plan is in place. I think even more so after the way that the season ended, that Wemby is leaving with a fresh breath. That last little Insta barrage where he was comparing his coach to Yoda, which if I'm Pop, I'm kind of like, dude, can we find a better mentor? Look, you're telling me I look like that guy?
What do you mean a better mentor?
Well, as far as better looking mentor is what I should have said. World. Maybe we could find a better looking mentor than Yoda.
Name it. Name the person.
I don't know. I'm just saying I'd rather be compared to maybe the mentor from Kung Fu. I'm just trying to figure an old dude. Like maybe Pat Morita. He's dead, but from Karate Kid. That's a good mentor.
No.
Yoda
was.
You're gonna call me a 3-foot green dude with giant ears and wispy hair.
He is the most powerful.
He is. I'm not taking away, but can't we find another mentor to compare me to? Like, you get to be the young, good-looking guy. I'm the old, the 300-year-old, soon-to-be dead, short green dude. That's who I am in this. If I'm Pop.
Wow.
Maybe Gandalf. See, we could have gone there.
Gandalf.
Gandalf at least is a big dude with a flowing beard and kind of badass. Not this little tiny dude that you carry around in a backpack.
Gandalf the Gray or Gandalf the White? You got to be specific.
Well, the Gray.
The Gray was the weaker one. Gandalf the White was the
Who was the Dumbledore? Who was Dumbledore? Dumbledore.
Dumbledore also
the first
not a mentor,
Dumbledore,
just a professor.
The first Dumbledore.
Well, if you're talking about the actors, but
yes.
There's one Dumbledore. Yoda was perfect. You're lowering in quality of mentor by going to Gandalf and to Dumbledore. Again, Gandalf is a great leader.
I beg to differ.
He's not a mentor.
Gandalf is as equal to Yoda as Yoda was ever equal to Gandalf. Equal powers.
Gandalf lost. He died.
He with a purpose. It was part of the plan. As did Yoda.
You belong nowhere in this conversation about
what?
Yoda and Gandalf and Dumbledore. Again,
I put it to you
Yoda is just
that Gandalf is as equal to Yoda as anything else.
No, that's just not
what?
True. I'm sorry. No. Yoda's the most powerful being in the galaxy. There's a ring that Gandalf can fall victim to because of its power.
Oh.
That's right.
Okay, Dumbledore.
Again, also he's not even a mentor. He kind of left Harry out to dry. Hey, 11-year-old boy, solve all my problems.
He used what were the tools available to him. He orchestrated a
Pop, if you're listening, I am with Wemby that you are Yoda. Please
no, he's Dumbledore.
Rob convince you anything else.
I'd rather be Dumbledore because better hair.
Wow.
And the Gray was not as weak. It was weaker than the White. I guess he kind of was.
He was originally Gandalf the Gray, and then he died, and he was like reincarnated as Gandalf the White.
But I never took him as more powerful than the White. And as we said, I've been a part of a lot of nerdy conversations.
Wow.
In my day, and the comparison between Yoda, Gandalf, and Dumbledore.
This was
it rivals where I've been, but never been such. Part of this other quiz for those that are draft geeks. I know that the Spurs have so many draft picks coming up. It could be 2 in the top 10 this year. Next year, we've got the Atlanta Hawks deal coming to fruition, and the Bulls deal could come in. So there could be 3 next year, or maybe even 4 next year if Toronto gets lucky and has a top 5 protected. But I'll be honest with you, I just don't see a lot in this draft. I really don't. And because I don't, you have to either go, do I trust the guys to go find the diamonds? Because it used to be a no-brainer. I used to love a draft like this because it really separated the smart GMs and those that are really kind of GMing for their job instead of GMing for the team, if you know what I mean. And Goldman, what's Jeff? I'm sorry.
Jeff Goodman.
Goodman said as much. Like, this is going to separate the good from the bad GMs.
Well, if the class is so bad.
Bad is not the best word. There just is no separator. There's a lot of guys that can do the very same thing. So you got to find
a GM's fault.
No, it's not, but it's up to the GM to find that puzzle piece, because there's a bunch of dudes out there that can do a lot of the same things. And there's not a guy where you go, his ceiling is so absolutely high that I'm willing to sacrifice time and effort to get there. There's really not a bunch of those guys. We had a Dillingham on Eric Bishop. But Dillingham, when it came to the tournament, I used the tournament as a bit of a crucible. The guy just kind of fell apart. So I love the skill set. I love the idea of a guard for the Spurs, but he didn't separate himself. Neither did his running mate and Shepard, guys I liked. So again, I think that because there's so much impetus as you better scout and you better find that right guy. And here's the problem. None of these guys are going to tell you they're the right guy immediately. I mean, it's going to take some time and put them in the oven because you compare it to last year. Scoot last year.
Right.
The other proposed possible number one, who, if he was coming out this year, he, Holland, or Dillingham would easily be one of the best point guards coming. And I do believe he would be the number one pick overall. And this guy couldn't find his way on the court until until January, February. Some injuries and some other stuff, but they're so far away. So as a GM, you're looking at this going, well, I could lose my gig, but we're not even going to know for 3 years.
And I think that there's an understanding there as far as like getting GMs fired. But yeah, I think that the potential for volatility is much higher this year.
But I will tell you this: the problem with waiting is I ain't down to tank no more.
I mean, who is?
You know what I mean? I want other teams to tank. I want their picks to matter because they're tanking. But why tank if your picks don't matter? You know. So there's the bird in the hand premise is you better get it now. And I'm starting to fall into this boat where you better get it now. And when Woj tells me, look, there's a lot of guys that want to move. I hear from the man himself, Wemby, saying, yeah, they're creeping my DMs. They're kind of down to get down here. So I'm hearing from him. So if the market is in flux and they want to come here, at the same time, we're competing against some other Western teams like the Lakers who are swinging for the fences. They got to win now. It's a very appropriate movement. This is Game of Thrones stuff because no matter what they do, no matter what the Spurs do this year in the offseason, they ain't going to be ready to compete with Minnesota and Denver. They ain't going to be ready. No matter what they do. So you got to play that into it as well. We need the improvement. We want to get better, but how much better can we get and still not worry about the imminent future? That is not, I mean, it would take a colossal collapse and injuries for the Spurs to become relevant in the West right now. It's still a knife fight, and it will continue to be so.
I mean, that's my problem with like looking at things in this grand sense is you have no idea when any of that's going to change, right? Like,
right.
I mean, we've always known that the West is going to be, a knife fight or whatever. But I mean, using myself as an example, I personally underestimated Minnesota these playoffs. And look, we're 2 games in. Like, I'm not trying to have a massive overreaction or anything like that. But like, what if Phoenix is back next year, right? Like
they probably will be.
What if New Orleans takes another step, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what if Houston takes another step, right? Like, we could very easily, add a lot of teams in the mix. And so this long game of like playing for like we've got to wait for the right time to get good. You just have no idea.
Exactly. You can't let that predicate your movements.
Yeah,
I agree.
And even then, you talked about how you're done tanking. Okay, what if you find yourself tanking and then like, oh, turns out next year's class kind of sucks. You know what I mean? Like, oh, but you have all those picks. You know what I mean? You have all those picks. There's so much that's out of your control here. And that's why it's so I mean, it's so slow, unnecessarily slow, and potentially unwise to go at it that way. Like, you don't have to cook this in the crock pot. Just slap it in the frying pan, throw some butter, and let's roll. You know what I'm saying? We don't need it to be this exact recipe right now. We just need food on the plate.
Mike Bean's on our brigade bar, and we appreciate you sounding off. I want to hear more of it. This is a good one. If you can't call it or you can't text us at 656-3776, we do appreciate it. Get up on the brigade bar. Why can't they be as good as OKC? Mike, I agree. OKC, they're the second youngest team, and they're tired of excuses. I'm with you. But OKC is a year actually 2 years ahead of us in this process. Keep in mind, this has been a plotting process for them. And yes, I think the Spurs aspire to be exactly like Oklahoma City. So if they do, as a Spurs fan, you say you're tired of excuses. Well, if you're following the Oklahoma City model, we're still 2 years away. We're still in the process of building, and hopefully there's a Shai Gilgeous in there because they got their Wemby and Chet Holmgren. But what they found was a Shai Gilgeous amongst all these draft picks they'd accumulated from Durant and George and all the other moves that they made. They found a dude in Shai. They knew they got what they got with Chet. They knew that, but they had to find a dude in Shai. Spurs got to find a dude.
You've got to be willing to look, though. I mean, that's the problem.
Well, you get all these picks. One of them will turn out right.
Like, you don't need to just thumb your nose at anything and say, like, we're good. We don't have to explore this avenue of roster building. You just, I mean, imagine the Thunder without him. Imagine if the Thunder had just stuck to, like, let's just roll with our draft. Let's just keep drafting. Let's just keep building. Let's just ignore everything else. Like, what? You know what I mean? It's crazy to think about right now.
And I don't want to put into the minds that to the detriment, we don't want to stall our growth because other teams are good. We want to get good as fast as possible because you never know. Keep in mind, this is a playoff without Memphis because Ja Morant wasn't here all season. At the same thing. And the same thing with New Orleans. New Orleans is a sleeping giant. If they can put all these pieces together at some point, if they can get a healthy Zion and a healthy Brandon Ingram and an ongoing CJ and that bench, that's another team that, oh my goodness. Then you go at Houston. Oh my goodness, look at the talent at Houston. If they can wrangle all these guys together, remember, this is a roster that we saw win 12 straight games to close the season out. And then there's the rebirth of Dallas. We saw what Luka is capable of all the time. So, the West is going to continue to be tough, and to predicate anything that the Spurs do going, well, we don't want to be too good too soon. You can't do that.
Even if, like, those teams don't take leaps, because other teams will fall. You have no idea what other movement you'll see. Like, what if Devin Booker is done in Phoenix? And you know what I mean? What if Devin Booker joins up with whoever? You know what I mean? Like, you just have no clue what's lurking around the corner. So sitting back and acting as if the status quo is going to remain and you're going to be better than it, I mean, is a little bit foolish.
It's just so unfortunate that of all the times for the Spurs to really find themselves in a situation to shop and get a couple of top 10 picks, they legitimately face the year after finding the biggest diamond in the history of diamond mines. They stumble into a for the lack of a bad analogy, a dry well. I mean, there's just not a lot there. And they have 2 picks to pick out of. So, it's a 2 to make 1 proposition. They managed to find something in that the Keldon at 30 and Luka sandwich there at whatever it was.
Then if you know it's a dry well, then look for water elsewhere. You know what I'm saying?
But see, the problem is everybody else knows that this is a tough one. So I think everybody's willing to listen.
Rob, then Brian Wright, I expect you to be good at your job.
You better be. Yes.
Like,
and I'm
sorry that it's hard. I'm sorry that it's not, just you can wake up and walk into it and just build an NBA championship team. But I'm sorry that you're going to have to work. I'm sorry that you're going to have to figure this out and think of some non-conventional ways to do this. But you know what? Everyone else is going to try. So you have to try as well. And guess what? You have the inside track on everyone else because they're all calling your dude number 1. They want to play with him. So tell Wemby to pat you through and talk something, because you cannot just know that the well is going to be dry, like Rob just said, and walk up and be like, guys, you're never going to believe this. There's not a lot of water in here. We know. we know. So go find it somewhere else.